Hi there, I'm Erin. I work in tech and formerly at Carta, which is private equity and all this stuff, so super cool to hear what you're thinking. I am wondering, tech is kind of reeling from the zero interest economy and lack of exit ability, and I'm just wondering how you're thinking about that with ACORs and staying true to the artistic vision.
Yeah, super appreciate that question. And yeah, I think there's a lot that's exciting. I mean, I think everything about A Corps is exciting. There's a shadow. There's a shadow to say, well, we want more money to enter the space because there isn't enough, and generally what's there we have to beg and borrow for. But what will it mean when that money enters the space? How does that change the work that we make? What sort of expectations are there? And yeah, what I would say is that there already are a lot of investors in culture and creative things. They operate now in the gray market of there aren't well-defined ways to do things, and generally gray markets benefit people with money versus people looking for money. And so I think that there is a lot of that already at play. Right now it's moving in inefficient ways and not maybe the fairest terms, and that I think generally it's found that if you create more standard ways of doing things, if you can make something like a safe agreement for an artist, that will lubricate and allow more funding to happen. We are certainly talking to people about helping to prepare initial A Corp funds that could be there, and also things like A Corp education or financial literacy tools or classes that can be there as the first ones get off the ground. But yeah, I think that there will be a range of like very sophisticated financial instrumentation and things that are probably beyond my understanding in many ways, as well as just like good, solid bookkeeping for tracking your expenses, for managing your income and all of that. But it does open up a lot of doors that are can seem unnerving, I think, but ultimately it's part of how we get there.
Hi, I'm Lee. You may not be at this point, but I'm curious, what do you think will be the legislative hurdles to getting something like this passed? Meaning, like, at what point can I call my representatives? Because I really love doing that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, love it.
I'm getting so good at it.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm so glad to hear that. So I presented this idea as a TED Talk like a month ago. And that talk will go online at some point in the next month, at which point the website I mentioned and like a public campaign will begin in a more concentrated way. And we're going on tour and doing events in different cities, meeting with artists. And in the fall is going to be like the real political crescendo, all with the goal of getting this on the legislative docket for January of next year. And there's a few states that are important that we're focused on, but it's sort of like building up to the fall when people will be paying attention, and then let's just make this seem like the most inevitable, good for everybody idea ever. And so I would say one of the reasons when you do the survey on the website, we ask, where do you live and where were you born? Because we want to know people who are come from important districts for singular politicians who might hold some sway. But the good news is that working at a state level on something as esoteric as this, these tend to be nonpartisan things, and it's just looked at as like how sound is the reasoning, and it sort of escapes a lot of the noise. So our hope is that it can just stay in that like boring but good category. Yeah.
Hi, I'm John. Can you hear me? Is this on? Okay. Okay. So I hate to be a doomster, but I always get a little skeptical when I hear people predict the future.
Yeah.
So what would your advice be to this audience here of what we can do to help this future that you described, this creative century, actually happen and not be a bubble? Because we don't know the future, but we have agency. So, and it sounds great.
Yeah,
so
love it.
How could we help make this happen?
Yeah. Well, I think you're asking the exact right question, and I think that is the way it happens. Honestly, like, I can look now and see like a narrative to my life that I was blind to every step of the way. And even the steps that have taken to this have been wiggles in the darkness, where you bump into something, you're like, oh, maybe that's interesting. So I'm truly, it's a very alive journey I'm coming to you with, and so, but the things I think are important. Number one is that when I first had this idea of like the meta label thing, I wrote an essay about it, and I was going to send it as a newsletter because that's my default thing. I just send newsletters to things, and my wife, who I think is here, Jamie, I don't know, but she said to me, she's like, don't just send that as a newsletter. It's just going to make you disappointed again. True. And instead, what I ended up doing is there was like 5 people I was thinking about when I wrote it. And I just wrote those people individually and shared the Google Doc. I was like, hey, here's the thing. I haven't published this anywhere. But thinking about it, wonder what it does for you. And all 5 of those people wrote back. I already knew a couple of them, but not all of them. And they all wrote back super encouraging, interesting words and thoughts. And that was like the start of like this little conspiracy. But there was something I found powerful about that, about not trying to put something on main, and instead thinking, who am I trying to talk to about this, and what happens if we just talk directly to each other? So just that, going to a different door, really opened up a different set of circumstances for me. So that's one thing I would suggest. I've also found myself really playing more with the form of what I release. So say rather than like just publishing an essay as like a newsletter or something, instead I released one I'd worked on forever as a zip file, as a limited edition zip file, where people could pay $5. I sold 250 in about a week. They all sold out. I put up another round. I've sold maybe 700 of these at this point. And it was me being like, it's a essay, it's a video of me talking about it. It's like just sort of like all my feelings together. But through that, I've ended up in a dialogue with like 100 of these people who've written very detailed things back. And it's just created a different form of nurturing and power, is what it feels like. And ultimately, these conspiracies they ultimately do need to like have plans and act it on main or be a part of something bigger. And I would say that what I feel is that whatever scene or sort of culture community that we're sort of part of right now, we're not the only ones here, there's others of us here, but to me it feels like a network that's growing. And that with tools, and I think the web is going to continue to move in a way that acknowledges groups in a way that it hasn't before, I think it's going to empower us. But for me, it just started with sort of questioning, what is the outcome I truly want out of my work? Is it that I want a number of likes? Is it that I want to be in dialogue with a certain person? Like, what is it that I want? And that led me somewhere different than just following the status quo. So it's not a full answer for you, but that's how I would begin. Thank you for asking that.